Yay Networks.
I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. So one of the things that I love to do, just in general, but also for this podcast, is to continue to find new products out there and to share with y'all new products that we're finding that align with the same nutritional goals that we're all striving for, and things that make it easier for us to eat this way. Because, you know, there's all the things that we want to do nutritionally, but then it also comes into, okay, I need to take the time or have the skill to make it. And so when we can find things that help us with that shortcut, that's even better. So the product that we're talking about today is Kevin's Natural Foods, and I'm going to share more about it in a minute. But I recently did my top picks, my Costco top picks on a TV segment, our WGNO TV segment here in New Orleans. And I did an expanded version of that for Shape.com, Shape Magazine. And so in my Costco top finds, I included Kevin's. The two that I have that are in our stores here locally in New Orleans consistently are the Thai style coconut chicken and also Korean barbecue style chicken. And I love them because it's super clean ingredient list. It is just very simple ingredients, but the quality of the food is, so it's in the prepared foods, it's in the refrigerated section. And so you heat up the chicken in the skillet and then you add the sauce. But it's one of those things that typically we don't do a lot of those at our house. So Brad my husband is like, you know, he's not going to eat something just because it's there. He wants to eat something that he truly enjoys. And so a lot of those, the quality of it is just not fantastic. It's just kind of marginal. And so we tried these though, and he was like, oh, I mean, it tastes like something you get from a restaurant. And so we have, like, we talk about Kevin, like I didn't know Kevin, now I do, but we'd be like, oh, you know, Kevin did this or whatever it is. Like, we were becoming very familiar with the Kevin's brand. I featured it in our TV segment. And like I said, in Shape Magazine, my top Costco finds. And then the PR team for Kevin's brand reached out, and I said, hey, would you want to do an interview with Kevin, the founder of Kevin's Natural Foods? And I get a lot of media pitches, and I turn down or just, you know, I disregard most of them because there's always, I mean, a dozen plus a day are going to come through about something. And most of them are not something that I would want to cover, that I would want to share with y'all, or that I'm really interested in, or that aligns nutritionally. But because I really love Kevin's, the taste, the quality of it, but I've also really surprised at the nutritional profile of it. So I was immediately interested. So part of why I love it. So I talked about the quality of it. It's something that tastes like something that is coming out of a restaurant, but the nutrition stats on it. So even something like the Korean barbecue style chicken that I was saying, that's something that typically I immediately made the assumption, this probably has a lot of sugar in it. It has 1 gram of added sugar, and it has 2 grams total sugar. So it's 23 grams of protein and only 5 total carbs. So, and the ingredients, again, super, super simple. So the things like there's the Thai style coconut chicken. That's another one that typically something like that would be like really high in sodium. Some of these meals that we would see like in stores. And this is one that a serving of it has 420 milligrams of sodium. So, I mean, that's not crazy at all for a full entree. So I was like, these are nutritionally, I like them. I like the nutrition stats. I like the ingredients. I like the quality. I like how it tastes. I like how easy it is to prepare. So all of these reasons. And I also say this, Kevin's is not sponsoring this segment and they haven't ever sponsored this segment. So that is not why we're doing this. This is something that I just truly was like, man, this is cool. I want to hear I love hearing how companies in general got their start. And so I was like, I want to hear how this brand got its start. I've been seeing it, and I've been seeing it more and more in stores. And so they are all paleo style dishes. So all of them have the common theme that they're paleo style. So they have paleo style ingredients, which means things like no soy, no dairy, no wheat, no processed sugar. So again, like we said earlier, just really clean ingredients. So to give you an idea of just how quickly the brand has expanded, which is part of the reason I wanted to have Kevin on here, they launched this product, the first finished product of Kevin's Natural Foods, shipped out in August of 2019. So just August, right before COVID and all this. And in the less than 20 months, or it's been 20-ish months since then, they are in over 8,000 stores nationwide. They have a huge distribution. He's on track, they said, for this year to have about $100 million in sales. So it has been a very quick ramp up. And I think it's really interesting to hear, how did this happen? How did the scale up happen so quickly? How do they develop this product line and kind of what goes into it? And then Kevin's own personal story that kind of ties it all together. And really like why he was so tuned in to hearing what consumers wanted. And then let's bring a product to the market to help fulfill these needs. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to sit down with Kevin to learn a little bit more about him, about the brand. I had a little huddle call with him before to kind of help wrap my head around kind of the big picture. And so he is going to be sharing that with y'all today. So with that, welcome, Kevin. I am so excited to spend this time with you to learn more about your backstory and kind of how the brand Kevin's came to be. So thank you.
Same here. Thanks for having me on.
So when we were talking about like foods like this, like the Kevin's Natural Foods line, my husband, Brad, I don't want to say he's particular, but he's particular on things. And he would rather, like, he will take a bite of something. And if he doesn't think that it tastes good, he's not going to take the second bite. And, you know, that doesn't mean that everything has to be like gourmet quality, but he's not going to eat just because food's in front of him. He's going to eat because he truly enjoys it. And so Kevin's, the brand, when we saw it first, I think we saw it in Whole Foods and we didn't buy it, but we saw it. And then when we saw it in Costco, we bought it and he was just like, this is incredible. So it's something that we've been having for months now. And then after I featured it on a TV segment on WGNO and also in Shape, then the PR team that you work with reached out to me and they're like, hey, would you like to do an interview with Kevin? I'm like, yes, please. Yeah. I want to hear the backstory about this. So I guess where do you want to get started to I'd love to hear kind of your story, how you built the brand, distribution, and just kind of how you take it from like how the idea came to be to where it is now.
Sure. No, I think that's a great place to start. And it's music to my ears to hear about your husband's experience and yours, because and it'll come up in the story, but that is one of the foundational components of the brand and what we're trying to pull off. That is was our kind of impossible objective at the beginning of this, is how do you make food that is healthy taste good? And so it's been a journey. I guess maybe I'll kind of start at the beginning.
Yeah, for sure.
So here goes. It was born in part from my passion from health and wellness, which actually started when I was relatively young in the town I grew up in, which is called Orangeville, about 20 minutes outside of Sacramento. The cool thing to do in high school was to go and lift weights at the gym. And that was, we would go, and I don't even think health was a consideration at that point.
Is it a pretty small town?
Muscle. Yeah, pretty small town. Kind of almost like rural meets suburbs, a very small town. So everybody was at the gym and they would all exercise, and it was like half socializing, half exercising. So nothing very noble about it. It was purely a vanity play.
Vanity, yeah.
Yeah, but hey, it got me in the gym, and I started spending some time exercising and thinking about, programming and what was I going to do when I got to the gym, and it became a habit. And I carried that forward into college, and I was exercising when I went down to San Diego State. My game plan was I wanted to get my business degree. My dad had his own company. He was an entrepreneur, never went to college. So it was like imperative that I went, and I wanted to be like him and get into business. So I go down to San Diego State and I'm going to study business, and I'm already in the gym exercising frequently, and I had to pay the bills. So I made the choice. This was kind of the first kind of big learning that informed, set me on the right track to to develop the brand later in life, I decided to become a personal trainer. And it's scary how easy it is, by the way, to become a personal trainer. Yeah. I took the course, did the certification, and then I was in the business. And
it is one of those, like, it's really easy to get the certification. And so to our listeners, like, yeah, it's a buyer beware, because then it's how much does that person put into like their ongoing education and knowledge and stuff beyond that. Yeah.
So true. Yeah. It's a good disclaimer, like vet your personal trainer and make sure they have some experience and that their programming makes sense. And there's a lot of great ones out there, obviously, that have helped a lot of people, but the bar is pretty low just to get started.
Let's take a minute to talk about Headspace, one of our sponsors for this week's podcast. So you may have tried meditation before and it didn't go so well, or maybe you felt like you were just doing it wrong. So if enhancing your mental well-being is part of your self-care plan, you're going to want to check out Headspace. Headspace is your daily dose of mindfulness in the form of guided meditations and an easy-to-use app. It's one of the only meditation apps advancing the field of mindfulness and meditation through clinically validated research. I love that Headspace is also so customizable for whatever we're dealing with right now. Whatever the situation, Headspace really can help us feel better. Feeling overwhelmed? Headspace has a 3-minute SOS meditation for you. If you need help falling asleep, Headspace has wind down sessions that members swear by. And for parents, Headspace even has morning meditations that you can do with your kids. Headspace's approach to mindfulness can help to reduce stress, improve sleep, boost focus, and increase our overall sense of well-being on our schedule, anytime, anywhere. We all deserve to feel as happy as possible, and Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/fueled. That's headspace.com/fueled for a free 1-month trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. This is the best deal offered right now. Head to headspace.com/fueled today. So that was sort of your like, okay, that helps like pay the bills in college.
Yeah, but there was an insight that I uncovered that I hadn't even expected. It was completely just a motivation to pay the bills in college, and it seemed like a good fit. But I ended up helping some people, not a lot of people, but I had my client base. I had a robust client base, especially for a young personal trainer, and I got really into it, and I took it very seriously. I became an important part of these people's lives who would come and work out with me three days a week, 4 days a week in some cases. And I would help them achieve their objectives, and they were earnest, most of them, about trying to improve their life and improve their health and their wellness. And so I dealt with a small population of people that were motivated to improve their health and needed help getting there. And
it's so rewarding.
Stuck with
me.
Big time, big time, especially for a young person. You're so in your own head and just so concerned with your own well-being that it was nice to think about others. And anyway, so I did that for all the way through college, embraced it, loved it, lived that kind of health and wellness lifestyle. It became a part of my personal identity. And ironically, in college, being like a health nut, I got really sick. So zero history of health issues in my family history. And I am living a relatively healthy lifestyle. And when I was 20, I got hit with an autoimmune disorder. It's called Stevens-Johnson syndrome. And I had a flare-up out of the blue. It felt like this freak thing at the time where, and if you're familiar with autoimmune disorders, your body essentially attacks itself. And there's a number of different disorders out there and in the way that the diseases manifest. But in this particular one, my body would attack itself, and it would surface in all of my mucous membranes becoming inflamed and blistered, just this horrible experience. And obviously I was admitted to the hospital when it first happened, and it took a long time for the doctors to diagnose. And the way to treat an autoimmune disorder is to give you medicine and to knock down your immune system. And they obviously can't do that until they're pretty sure it's an autoimmune disorder. If it's a virus or something, they could really put you in harm's way. So I'm like living with these symptoms in the hospital, and I can't eat. It is just this wild experience.
And when you say like the mucous membranes, we're talking like, so your eyes, your throat, your mouth, lungs, all of this is getting just these like inflamed with these painful blisters, and like it's I wasn't familiar with Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and so when you and I talked for a bit before this podcast, I looked it up, and wow, it looks really like crazy painful, and it's a lot of times, like you said, it's when you have a flare up, it isn't something that's a mild flare up. It's something that, from what I'm reading, usually does require hospitalization. So you were in and out of the hospital several different times.
Yep, exactly. And same, you got it right. I mean, it was like you had teams of people looking at you. They would diagnose it by, taking biopsies, and they had to do bronchoscopies and things with the lungs. I mean, everything you said is right on the money. So they nursed me back to health after they diagnosed it by knocking my immune system down. I'd lost like 50 pounds, and there was pneumonia had developed, and that would happen each time that I would get a flare up. So it was took a long time to nurse me back to health. A few weeks in the hospital, and then I wasn't myself again physically for months afterwards. And after it was diagnosed, I guess there's a high percentage of cases that they can't really figure out the trigger. Sometimes it's sparked by like an antibiotic you take or something, which wasn't my situation. But the doctors, after that very first one when I was 20, were very confident. And it was interesting how confident they were. They were like, I don't think this is going to happen to you again. This seems like a fluke. I think you just go on with your life, and hopefully it never comes back again. Well, that turned out to be wrong. It became kind of a chronic thing where every 4 to 6 months I would have a flare up. And it became a little bit of a routine where I'd get in the hospital, and luckily after the subsequent flare-ups, they knew what it was. So they were able to start knocking my immune system down right away and treating it right away. So the hospital stints went, down to a week, 1 to 2 weeks, but it was still extremely disruptive. And it happened for 5 years. So
and then you're this sick person. You've been the person like training people and getting them well, and now you're the sick guy. Yeah.
It's so true. It's a mindset shift for sure. And it's demoralizing big time, because, I mean, even think about just one small example. Think about fitness, and you go and you spend all this energy to try to improve your fitness and, increase your strength. And then all of a sudden you're not eating for 2 weeks and you're losing 20 pounds. It's like you ran up the mountain only to just slide right down.
Right.
So this goes on for about 5 years, and it's something happened in 2010, early 2011. I stumbled on, I still remember, it was Rob Wolf's work, and he was one of the early advocates for the paleo diet. And he had published something. I don't even remember at the time if it was his book that I read. I ended up, reading all his stuff, but or if it was a blog post. But I had read somewhere that the paleo diet, which was rooted in ancestral health, kind of the caveman diet, eating like we ate in the Paleolithic era, was good for autoimmune disorders, for managing flare-ups, because it was tailored around foods that caused low inflammation. So your body it wasn't like living in a constant state of low level inflammation. And so I decided to give it a shot.
And at this point, you're like grasping at straws. You're like, it's probably some out of, yes, this is, something you're reading that has some scientific basis, but you're also at this point, I'm sure, like willing to try anything.
Yes, especially this, because it was so low investment for me. It was all you had to do was change what you were eating, and I was like, why not? I'll give it a go. And I started eating that way, and it takes some time to realize if it's working or not, because the flare-ups would only occur like every 4 to 6 months. So I just integrated it in my life, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And as I start eating this way, I start feeling better. I start sleeping better. I start researching it more, and I start drinking the Kool-Aid big time. Ironic analogy, because you can't drink Kool-Aid, but I started buying into this thing, and I loved the whole thought process behind it. And human evolution, we've been 2 million plus years wired to eat this way, and why not? I mean, the thinking also resonated with me, in addition to all the other clinical research that started taking place, and my own personal experience was great. And so I am all in on this way of life, and I'm very motivated to follow the program. And then also no more flare-ups. 6 months goes by, a year goes by. I have 1 or 2 little blips on the radar over the years, but they're not big flare-ups. They're not even.
Did you have to go to the hospital at all?
No.
Wow.
Done. Yeah, no medicine even. It was just like if, just a couple of blisters here or there and then gone. It was like and then eventually just
Wow.
nothing. So it obviously I became a believer of the diet, and that is how I kind of got on that track. But that didn't, it's not like then instantly I went into Kevin's. It's kind of funny. I had solved that problem that I was dealing with, and it kind of allowed me just to get back on track with my life. I had already graduated college. I kind of, made it through. The professors worked with me when would have flare-ups around finals or whatever, and they were accommodating. And I got through college, and I was in the workforce. I was working. I had ended up studying marketing. That was the emphasis I chose in business. And I ended up getting in the advertising industry and in marketing back up in Sacramento. And I am just, at this point, just loving life. I'm healthy. I'm eating this way. I'm not really thinking about nutrition or wellness from a business standpoint. I'm just like happy to be out of the hospital and in my career. And at that point, I thought every step I took in my career, I would just go all in. And I thought that I would, like when I was in advertising, I figured I'd be in advertising forever. And I loved it. And then I ended up getting in the supermarket business, had this wonderful opportunity to oversee a marketing department for a company called Save Mart Supermarkets out in California. And that was my first, I guess, entrance into the food industry from a bigger level. And that is when I had my first real lucky break. I ended up meeting somebody who is now the co-founder of Kevin's, Dan Costa, and while I was at Save Mart, and he saw something in me and recruited me. And he had this amazing track record. He was an entrepreneur, just started washing dishes when he was 15, grew multi-million-dollar companies over the course of his 30-year career, from successful restaurants to he's had started a food manufacturing company that had sold to Tyson Foods, and had been in the food business for years and years, had a lot of success in apparel, and just this amazing track record and great guy. And he was starting a meal kit company, and he asked me to come and help him build it. He needed somebody to operate the day-to-day because he had other things going on too.
This is meal kit company, like what we would think of like HelloFresh or Blue Apron.
Exactly. Okay. But different in a lot of ways, and kind of remarkable because this was before those guys had really hit the scene. This was in 2013. So they weren't household names by any means at that point. They were in really early startup phases, kind of like where Dan was at. And but he also, the difference there too, is he also had a manufacturing background. So his vision was, I want to not only I sell meal kits and create this meal kit concept, but I would like to make everything that goes into meal kits, and I'd like to partner with supermarkets. He didn't want to do the home delivery. He thought the supermarket model would be better. So I get working with him in 2013, and this is where I start to learn. When he recruits me, I go, I don't know anything about food manufacturing. I'm in marketing, and he goes, it's okay. I know that part. I need what you do on the branding side, and I just need someone that I could show you the ropes. I could get you into this. It's not impossible to learn. So I was on a track to go work for somebody for the rest of my career. I was going to be in corporate America and just happy to climb, the corporate ladder. And Dan really gave me the opportunity, and I was lucky to seize it and be in a position where I could, to go and get in an entrepreneurial environment where we had, 10 people working on this food concept, and learn what it was like to build a company and have that level of control. I mean, it was really a different hat. I mean, if you were going to if you made a mistake or did something well, it was hard for it to even be noticed in a $4.5 billion supermarket company. It's just not, it's hidden in the P&L. You're not moving the needle
much at all. Yeah.
No matter what you do. I mean, you can a little bit, but it's just around the edges. And so with this, it was, if you made a mistake, you saw it right there on the P&L that next at the end of the month. So it was a whole new experience for me. And I'm so grateful for it. And we started working together, and we started bringing this meal kit concept to life. And what we ended up doing was partnering with supermarkets, and we developed this great idea. It was a one-pan, 15-minute or less meal kit where the supermarket would cut the meat and portion the meat, and they would add the produce into the kits, and they would assemble them, and then we would manufacture like the sauces and the starches, the grains like the rice or the potatoes, and the seasonings, and these meal kits would be assembled at the store, and they would brand them under their label, and it was a great product,
but not particularly nutritious. This was just, it was
not.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
No, exactly. Nailed it. It was cleaner ingredients than a lot of processed food, but I wouldn't eat them regularly.
Right.
I wasn't, and so that was kind of missing from this whole concoction. But I'm not hyper focused on that. I'm living my life. Paleo is still relatively niche at that time too, and the meal kits were going to be an improvement from a lot of the way that Americans were eating. So we're going, and we start to have some success. Blue Apron and those guys start taking off, and so the supermarkets are really interested in having a program to compete with them. And we're at it for 5 years, and we expand, and we get into about 2,000 stores. It's not like monumental growth, but we're out there.
That's a lot. That's tremendous. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was. We had a good network of suppliers. We got to the point, and here was a real tipping point, where we got to the point where we were able to open our own manufacturing facility. We had been co-packing and leasing space and doing different things. So that was in 2013 when I started with him. In 2018, we break ground and we start building this production facility. And along the way, and here's where Kevin starts to come into play. So along the way, I'm gaining experience. I'm learning the business. We had done focus groups the whole time for 5 years, frequently, where we would go and recruit customers, and we would bring them, that back in the day before the pandemic, we'd bring them to the office, and we'd set up cooking stations. We'd have them cook with the meal kits. We'd talk to real consumers about anything and everything, from what we called the entrees to the cooking instructions to the flavor. And they were really important to us. We gleaned so many insights out of these focus groups. And we started to notice a transition over the 5 years where more and more folks that we would recruit, and we would recruit people at random, it wasn't intentional, were really interested in improving the way they were eating. And what I found interesting with my background was the knowledge around just an everyday consumer going into the supermarket looking to figure out how they were going to plan their meals for the week, started to want to make better decisions. They wanted to reduce sugar. They were more skeptical about high carbohydrate, overeating too much carbohydrates and grains. And they were starting to learn that, industrialized seed oils and things of that nature were bad. So there was a lot of folks out there in the world that were educating the general population, finally kind of, bucking these old conventional ways of thinking that were harmful to society.
It probably also helps that your focus group was in California, I'm thinking. But, I would imagine if the focus group was in person, which it was, because you were also getting them to taste and try these different products. But Big time.
Yeah. No, because California's on the forefront of that. But thankfully, there were some other movements happening at the time, like CrossFit started, this kind of grassroots movement, which became associated with paleo, and their gyms started popping up in parts of the country that weren't traditionally forward thinking. So you have California kind of ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And then other movements in popular diets like paleo starting to take off, and Whole30 and these guys. So it starts on the coast, right? And then kind of works its way inward. And so it was super helpful we were in California, even though, there's benefits to operating businesses in other parts of the country. It was great that we were in California. And, so we started noticing, I started paying particular attention because they started to talk more like I thought about nutrition. And I thought it was so interesting that this once niche diet that seemed kind of funny. And I was embarrassed to go to restaurants and order the types of things I wanted to eat. That
guy, right.
Yeah. It started in regular people that didn't have autoimmune disorders and things were eating this way and wanting to. So that was big for us. We realized that we didn't have to go and try to convince people to be healthy. They wanted to be healthy, and they were really struggling to pull it off at home.
So they had a lot of them had the education, they had the desire, but they didn't have they didn't know how, or they maybe didn't have the time to. So y'all started these focus groups. The whole goal of the focus groups was like cooking stations so that they could try, and like you were having people hands-on prepare them like as if they were purchasing from the stores. But then you were telling me in our call before, like it almost like the focus groups sort of even got away from that. And you just started focusing on like nutritionally and what do they want in the quality of meals. And like you stopped even having like the cooking be a part of it.
Yeah, well, it was like all cooking, and then we would dive into this nutrition nugget for months at a time, and then we would go prototype the products and come back, and then it would be cooking again. So you're exactly right. Once we started figuring out that it was an execution problem, there was like this unmet need that I want to eat healthy, and it's out there. I'm a person. I want to eat healthy. There's a lot of me, and I can't pull it off in my daily life. We started focusing on why. Human reasons why. Like what today you're going to go home after this focus group. Why are you not going to eat healthy? What's going to happen? And what we found was some things. It was very funny what we found. One was, back to your experience, people would get honest with us. I mean, we would always have serve a glass of red wine if you wanted, optional for the focus group. Let it all out. Where is it at? Flavor was a big deal. And that doesn't come out in like a research survey. That it only happens if you talk to people. At some point, we figured out that folks would try a diet. I mean, you'd ask in a focus group of random participants, how many people have tried a diet? Everybody almost would raise their hand. It was rare that they didn't. Why didn't you stick with it? And if you really probed and like got to the bottom of it, after a month of eating the same foods over and over again because they limited their food options, they would get bored and they'd have one bad day and it would snowball, and they just didn't have enough flavor in their life to maintain that diet for a long period of time. So we started unearthing these things. Okay, flavor. Okay, that's a big one. Now put that on the whiteboard. We got to solve that. That's not easy to do. Convenience, obviously, but define convenience. What does that mean to you? Is it the dishes? We had already uncovered that with the meal kits. Like Blue Apron and those guys had such a big fallout rate because of the prep work involved, the chopping and the cutting boards, the dishes. Okay, it has to be quick cleanup, has to be quick prep. It can't be complicated. And we just filled up the whiteboard with all of these reasons executionally why people couldn't pull it off. And at a certain point, I went to Dan and said, hey, we have this factory now. We can keep going on the meal kits, but why don't we try really leaning into like health? And I can't believe that we go to supermarkets in Texas now, and you and I are walking the aisles doing our research, and we go to the magazine department and there's 4 magazines about paleo and keto, and it's mainstream now. We know how to do this. We're uniquely qualified to go after this market. Let's do it. And instantly, Dan was in, he totally got it. I mean, we'd already been trying to kind of figure it out. Why not go all in and develop a line? And so then we got to work on Kevin's.
And this was recent. So as you and I are recording this podcast, it's right at the beginning of April of 2021, and this is 2018. So just a handful of years ago that you kind of like brought this idea back from what you're hearing in the focus group, and y'all even started the R&D process for Kevin's.
Yes, it was a very unique situation. It was actually even at the end of 2018, believe it or not. So we had already been working on a lot of things that we were able to transfer into Kevin's. So it's a little bit unique that you're starting a company and you have a factory being built. And we were already exploring aspects of the cooking technology that became really important to the brand, namely sous vide cooking was already going to be a part of what we were trying to do with our meal kits. And we can get more into that. But I also, we had already had a lot of conventional sauce recipes from the meal kits. So we had this unique situation.
Like the foundation, like the core is built.
The core was built, but like my true passion was missing.
Yeah.
And then we had the market was ready for kind of me to inject that into it. So then we had a great foundation, a great core, and it was still remarkably hard to take all of that and turn it into what Kevin's is today. But we were able to move quicker than most startups would be able to.
Let's pause for a minute to talk about Nutrafol, one of our sponsors for this week's episode. The nutrients in Nutrafol supplements support healthy hair growth from within by targeting the 5 root causes of hair thinning: stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, and metabolism. Nutrafol is a physician-formulated nutritional supplement made with potent botanicals. No matter your stage in life, Nutrafol has a solution. Nutrafol is ideal if you're experiencing thinning hair caused by stress, dieting, overstyling, environmental toxins. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support our show by going to Nutrafol.com, entering promo code FUELED to save 20% off your first month's subscription. This is their best offer anywhere, and it is only available to U.S. customers for a limited time. Plus, free shipping on every order. Get 20% off at Nutrafol.com. That's spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code FUELED. And I want to, for the sake of our listeners, just to hear how quickly it's expanded, then we can kind of backtrack to how it happened. So you guys, how long did it take before you got it together and you kind of had the first products finalized that you were shipping out into stores?
So we started in earnest right after Christmas, like January 2019, and our first product shipped to Costco Bay Area in August of 2019.
That's wild. So that's a fast turnaround. And then, so that's like the very first case is shipped. And now, so what is it, like 20 months later or something like that, less than 20 months later, how many, I guess, how do y'all do the count? Do you do the count based on products, items, units?
All of the above. So
Okay.
now one important metric for us, because the goal has evolved into, we want to achieve real dietary change. We think that we have the ability and the capability here to help the country improve their health. And so we're still working on the metrics we look at, but we eventually want to look at like the obesity and diabetes rates in the country. And we want to help reverse that. It's audacious, but we think we can over time. I mean, we're just getting started here. And so now we're just trying to expand distribution and get the product out there so people could work it into their lives. So it's important to us now that we're in over 8,000 stores across the country. Wow. From the Midwest to the Northeast to the Southeast. There's not a part of the country that we don't have distribution in the mainstream supermarkets.
That's incredible.
Which is big for us. Yeah. And, we're shipping it every single week. It depends on the week, but it's 200, 300,000 units a week are going out the doors, heading to the stores.
Wow. And then what does that translate to over the course of this year that you're on target for?
So we should do 100 million in sales by the end of the year.
Wow. That's incredible. So that's where I was like, because it is, I didn't see Kevin's, then all of a sudden I see Kevin's, and then it's like, wow, like it's grown quickly. And when you're seeing it, it's quick. It's immediately in Costco, Whole Foods, the places that are like, the distribution was great. So we'll kind of get back into that, but that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have this, because I think there's several things. And so you and I will talk about the nutrition part of kind of how you brought that into Kevin's, but then also for people who sort of have this idea, like they have an idea of a product that they are making themselves, and everyone loves it, and they're maybe selling it on a very small level, or they're just making it and giving it to their friends, or, whatever this looks like. And then how do you take something and really scale it, and then distribution and stuff like that. So then, okay, so you've got this facility already, this manufacturing facility. So you had, in that part of the conversation, a huge leg up that most people don't have. Then how did you decide, because Kevin's is, we should also specify, it's not in the freezer section, it's in the refrigerated section. And it's in the place that you're not always looking for healthy foods as well.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a good place to start. It's important to the story, even though it seems very tactical. Our products are sold, the biggest line we have is our refrigerated entrees. So you have pre-cooked proteins like Thai coconut chicken or Korean barbecue steak tips. And then we also have sides sold in the same section, like mashed cauliflower and, mashed sweet potatoes and riced cauliflower and grain-free and plant-based sides. In the refrigerated section in the supermarkets. And it's important. that was important to us. So we had been in the meal kit space, and one of the challenges with meal kits was, where do I merchandise them? Are they in the deli? Are they in the meat department? Usually we were cutting in space. And I actually was tired of that. I was like, it's such a debate every time we go get a new account of where these things are going to be merchandised. I want to find a spot in the store that's got solid space. It's dedicated space. It's in all the stores across the country. And we were looking at this, they call it the HMR, home meal replacement section. And once we started thinking about that, we're like, this is perfect. It's known for convenience. It is not known for quality. It's not known for health, but that's okay. We felt like as long as we could check one of the three kind of core pillars we have, convenience, nutrition, flavor, quality, we knew we could explain the others, and we could communicate through marketing the other attributes of the brand. So we're like, this is known for convenience. It's fresh. It's refrigerated. It's on the perimeter of the store where you're going to have folks that are trying to make healthy decisions, whipping around the store to look for produce and fresh meat. I think we could draw people over to the set. So we start putting a lot of our effort on, let's design this line to be merchandised there.
And when we say there, let's be clear. This is like that space. If most people who are like eating nutritiously, you're grocery shopping mindfully, this is where like that shredded barbecue chicken or like the tubs of pre-done mashed potatoes or like the little buckets of mac and cheese, like it's the stuff that nutritionally is typically just a disaster, and like your eyes aren't following there thinking you're going to find something healthy. So then, but the branding, I think that Kevin's branding, immediately if you see it, like it's going to catch your eye that something's different about it.
Yeah, people thought we were crazy when we were telling them that's where we were going. This is like the spot, the focus groups, they're like, you're going there. But it made sense. And then to your point, the branding, we had to think about that. So once you have a destination, I encourage this if you're developing a food product, once you have a destination in mind in the supermarket, if you want to sell in the stores, we would go to the supermarkets. We got to know the butchers. We would give them, gift cards and Starbucks and whatever they needed, because we would go in there and say, hey, could we put our product we're trying to develop in your set for like 20 minutes and take pictures and see what happens. And we'd even see if shoppers would walk up to it. And then I'd introduce myself and say, hey, there's no meat in there. I'm actually just trying to see if my package is going to work. And I'd ask people, and we would, we started.
Oh my gosh. So you would actually put it, like you would clear a little space out on the shelf and put it there to see what it would look like?
Oh yeah. Oh, big time. So we knew that if we didn't, we're not going to have. Like,
and wait, I'm sorry. And you're paying off the butchers with gift certificates to look the other way while y'all do this.
Yeah, they were,
sort of.
We knew some of them because, no, totally right. It's exactly what we were doing. And we had, been in there with our meal kits and stuff, and they knew us. And it was like, these folks, it's not going to hurt anything. And especially their customers aren't going to mind if somebody who's actually starting a company is trying to see if their product's going to work. And if they got in a conversation, they enjoyed the conversation. Wait, you're trying to do what? You want to put really your product here?
Well, because grocery stores, so being, a dietitian, that I'm always covering like different products and stuff like that. And we've got the TV segment here our listeners have heard us talk about, or for this podcast, I'm often lurking in the grocery store and lurking with maybe a notepad, lurking with a camera. And so there's been like more than a handful of times that maybe the store manager comes up, or they're very curious. Like one of the things that they think that sometimes I'm doing is like price checking for a competitor store.
Oh yeah.
And so when you're kind of like doing something that's like you're hanging out a little too much, like you get asked, you get questions. So I haven't really thought though, like that's like the bringing presents for the people there. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, it's so the way, and there's the right way to do it and the wrong way. I've been asked to leave supermarkets before too. Yes, I mean, you have to do it right and go tell the people what's going on.
Oh yeah, because, completely. And some stores are, I'm sure, going to be more understanding than others. And like you would, but that's really cool that you found these stores that were agreeable to that. They were like, yeah, sure. And like supportive of a smaller brand, kind of trying to find what their space is going to be. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And it became really crucial to us because we were so wrong in the first place. We were like, we need loud packaging. We got to attract, because we knew we weren't going to be on TV, advertising the products, driving people to that section right out the gate. So we knew that we had to get a shopper that was going to zip by that section. They were not going to stop at that section. They had to look over, see us, walk over, pick it up. We had to have enough people. We had to catch enough people's eyes to do that then they would tell their friends, and it would just grow. So it was really important that we jumped off the shelf. So we started with these loud packages, bright colors, vibrant colors, and we thought that was going to be it. And then we would put them on the shelf and it would just blend in like camouflage. And we're like,
everything
why
else
is it
is
blending
screaming
in?
at us. Yeah.
Everybody. So then we had the idea, why don't we make it white and just allocate a bunch of space to negative space, and maybe it'll like contrast. And it did. It totally did. We have this white, kind of stark white packaging, and we really gave a lot of emphasis on the food, and then pretty much nothing else on the front of the package until you walk up and pick it up. But it gets your attention. It stands out. And it also had it. We didn't anticipate this at the beginning, but it had the side benefit of looking very clean and natural and healthy. And it just all kind of came together because of that experience.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting that, you think, okay, bright and eye-catching, but that's what everyone else is doing. Everything is like shouting at us and all these loud colors and fonts and everything. And the Kevin's, the packaging, so it's kind of like the cardboard sleeve that goes around it for someone who hasn't seen it. And it's all white. The Kevin's logo is mostly like kind of a charcoal gray. The dish doesn't fill up. A lot of times, like the dish that you're buying fills up the whole front of the package. Y'all show it just plated up like what it would look like on our plate at home, maybe with a little more garnish than what some people would do, but still simple. Like you're not faking people out with it. It's like very simple garnish on there. And then it's a very simple understated with a couple of the nutrition claims, and it's ready in 5 minutes. It's like these tiny little pieces, but it's very understated. I think it's the opposite of what a lot of brands try to do. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay.
It was a little hard. It was kind of like, it took, I guess you'd call it almost like discipline, because we would go to design the package and you have all these claims. And
you wouldn't put so much.
Loud. Yeah. And our internal kind of motto is, if you say too much, you say nothing.
Yeah.
If you do too much, it's gone. So it was almost a form of discipline. And then by also understanding where we were going to be merchandised, it also gave us a bunch of other parameters that we needed to operate within. So we had an idea of the price point. We really didn't want to go above $10. It's a very price sensitive category. And the portion sizes were also kind of established in the category, where it's about a pound of food. And you, because you're selling the protein by itself, if it didn't make 2 adults full by the end of the meal, then you were putting too much sauce in or too much of something else. You had to have significant protein portions at about a pound of food that was going to be less than $10 per package. And that was kind of our parameter. There was shelf life parameters. I had to make it through the supply chain. So it was great to start the development process with that destination in mind, but because it really, sometimes to be creative, you need to be kind of boxed in and have those things identified before you go to develop the line.
Okay.
So then from there, we start developing the line, and we know what we got to achieve. And we had started looking into sous vide cooking. So the first big kind of development feature was we started looking into what's called sous vide cooking for the meal kits, because we wanted to extend the shelf life of the meat that was in our meal kits and also improve the quality. And we stumbled on this cooking technique called sous vide, which means under vacuum in French. It was invented by the French. And the cooking method is really unique, and it's amazing. Actually, you take whatever it is you're cooking, whether it's a meat or vegetable or seafood, and you vacuum pack it. That's why it means under vacuum. So you vacuum pack it in the raw state. So then you have it in a pouch in the raw state, and then you cook it in a hot water bath that's set to a precise temperature. So that's where the technology comes in. You have to have the ability to heat the hot water bath at the right temperature. So you actually take a pouch and you put it in water, and you cook it at a low temperature for a long period of time. And it's impossible to overcook. In our case, we started with meat. It would cook in its own juices. It would be ultra moist and tender, and you'd cook it low and slow. So it was very, very tender and had a fantastic mouthfeel. And it was cooked at the same rate from end to end, from the top of the protein to the bottom. So it wasn't a situation where you had to get the very middle of the chicken breast done so the outsides got overcooked. Mm-hmm. It was completely at the perfect doneness all the way through the meat. And on top of that, it extended the shelf life because you cooked it in the pouch and it killed all the bacteria in the pouch with very limited oxygen. And so it became not only a way to improve the quality of the meat, it also preserved the meat long enough to where you could sell it in a refrigerated state naturally. So now you went from a situation where in the prepared food space, in order to get shelf life, And in order to get that convenience step of actually pre-cooking the meat, typically you have to decrease the quality, and you are trading off quality for shelf life and convenience. Because of this cooking method for the meat, we were able to increase the quality and the convenience and make it through the supply chain. It took a lot of work to figure out the cook times, temps, and the marinades and how to do it and to find the right equipment. And it was a undertaking, but it paid off for us big time. And that was the first big kind of product attribute that fueled this brand.
Let's take a quick minute to talk about Billy, one of our sponsors for this week's podcast and an Allure Best of Beauty winner. Self-care and routine are more important than ever. Whatever you're using to get ready for the day should also make you feel amazing. Billy has recreated everyday essentials by delivering premium razors and high-performing body care directly to you. Go to mybilly.com to get their starter kit for just $9. That includes their award-winning razor, 2 refill blades, and a cult favorite magnetic holder. I love Billy's products, and you will too. They leave our skin feeling so soft. And to express a little love for our show, go to mybilly.com/fueled. It's a small way that you can support us while also getting the best razor you'll ever own. It's just $9 to get your starter kit, plus free shipping always. Go to mybilly.com/fueled. That's spelled mybillie.com/fueled. And I want to talk through the R&D process and then also kind of what sets Kevin's apart and what makes it different. So when we're talking about that flavor, and again, most prepared meals, whether they're in the freezer section or the refrigerated section, as I was saying before, like if Brad took a bite, he would say, this is terrible. With Kevin's, he's like, this tastes like something we would get from a restaurant. So I guess talking first about like what sets it apart and what makes it different. One is the sous vide technique. And I think the reality is a lot of brands aren't doing that because it takes so long. And a lot of brands are looking at high production, fast, like cranking it out. And so this is something that takes so much longer, but it is huge in the improvement in the texture of the chicken that's the end product that we're getting.
Yeah, it's big. And the process, there's a lot of little decisions, like hundreds that you make when you're developing your brand. And you have to have the right litmus test all the way through. And what we benefited from was the partnership was really good here. So we had, 5 years of working together under our belt, and Dan brings one lens, I bring another lens. And we agreed from the get-go that I am driving the health. We both have to agree on a product and think it tastes good and is healthy and everything before it goes out. But I own health. That's what I own. I establish the standards. I make sure that we don't use ingredients that aren't going to meet our standards, that we source right, all that stuff. Dan owns flavor. He's been a chef. He's made a good living making food taste delicious. And he just has excellent judgment when it comes to flavor. So we together, everything had to pass through those filters. And so that made it almost natural to where all these little decisions kind of fell into place, where we would never end up in an outcome like you were explaining, where we would have to compromise flavor for convenience because it wouldn't happen, or we had to compromise health for flavor because it wouldn't happen, because we just didn't let it happen. So then you start with that and just unwavering commitment to that. Then as you go through the process, there's a bunch of little decisions that are made. Sous vide. It's not easy to decide to sous vide. The equipment is big, it's expensive, it's cumbersome. You have to really learn about shelf life and the amount of acid that's in the marinade and your cook times and temperatures and how you monitor it. And there's a bunch of other technologies that get you much more throughput through your factory, much more pounds through your factory faster, like you were saying, and longer shelf life that are cheaper to do. So it's an investment into the quality. And there's just a lot of learning. You got to want to do it and you got to embrace it. So we embraced it. And then throughout the other aspects of the product development process, you just have to keep those standards up. So like, for example, it came down to, then you have to source your protein. We started with chicken. And what are the health standards? It has to be cage free. It has to be raised with no antibiotics or hormones, things that the buyers that were buying for that set, they'd never seen in that set. So it comes with a price premium that you have to explain and justify. And there's another decision you got to work into your model. Then you got to figure out how how to process efficiently, because yes, the buyers will take on a certain premium because of the claim, and if your brand could prove that it works, but we still want to be under that $10 price point. So we have to negotiate effectively. That's a whole aspect of this growth process that we could talk about. But continuing on the product side, then you had to, like, another big thing for us is that our goal is that you never buy a package from us and saute the chicken or beef or whatever it is, pork, and get a bad bite. We have an internal motto: no bad bites.
I love that phrase. Yeah.
It's so important, and it came out in the focus groups. Another thing that the focus groups led to is that whenever I buy pre-cooked food, the chicken or the meat quality is poor.
There's some sort of gristle in it, right? It's all pieces and parts, right?
Exactly. So we invested in trimming. That's not easy either. It's like, it's not like rocket science, but it's also not easy. You got to go, hire butchers and get the trim tables and pay attention to trimming every single piece, and it's an extra QA step. And you just have to do these things.
But I love this because you said, this is exactly what we want it to look like to the people that you're buying it from. And you're like, what do you need to do to help us get this product? Like, so you were like, okay, we aren't seeing, what we really want to buy from it sounds like from the distributors that you had. So you brought it to them and said, come look at this. This is what we want. How do you make this happen? Because this is the quality that we're looking for. And that's more expensive because there's you don't have the filler. You're basically having only the most premium parts. But again, that was kind of that unwavering commitment. The other thing that y'all did that I think is that you pointed out, and I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but as you're preparing the Kevins, you have the chicken that you're then, say, putting in the skillet, and you sort of, because it's sous vide, you just really have to heat it, and you're able to kind of brown it a bit, and then you add the sauce after, and you're tossing it through. So it's almost like you would at a restaurant. Whereas a lot of other meals, if you think about it, so many meals in the freezer section or refrigerated section, the meat and the sauce is already all the way through. So they're cooking that all together. It's sitting in there together for weeks, if not longer, before it reaches us. And then you're not able to kind of brown that meat and really have that almost like that fresh restaurant quality to it.
That was a big step for us. It was a hard one to make because we studied the category, and you're absolutely right. What would happen is the meat would be cut and portioned, and then it would be packed with a concentrated sauce.
Yeah.
And then it would be cooked in the sauce, usually at high temperatures, very quickly. And the sauce would have to accommodate the moisture from the meat leaching out. And there's just no way to really, truly capture restaurant flavor with that process, because there's no chef you'd ever go to their restaurant and they would be like, yeah, I just boiled this chicken breast in the sauce for you. Tell me what you think. It's not how you cook that type of product. So we again, it was new, and it kind of put us out there a little bit, and it was new for the consumer. They had never really got. It's
a higher expectation on the consumer. You're going to do this one step, and then you can eat it, versus take it out and pop it in the microwave.
Exactly. And we had to have a lot of focus groups about that. We're going to outsource one step to you guys. Do you think are you going to embrace this, or are you going to just throw it away because it's not as easy as the next guy on the shelf? And they were like, no way, we will, for the quality, we are in. And that another kind of focus group indicator. And so we did it, and we put it out there. And even before we got into sous vide cooking, a big core strength of ours was sauces. And we had really embraced this simmer sauce thought. And that was all Dan. It came from the restaurants where he had restaurants that would do such high volume, they would have to make the sauces in advance. And they found that the sauces you could actually make in advance without hurting the quality. Mm-hmm. And so they would pan sear the meats and then deglaze the pan with like a cold sauce and simmer it in there and heat it with the meat after the meat had already been cooked. And that simmer sauce process had started to catch on in the grocery store. There's a section in the grocery store, but we loved it. And we were like, we could actually do that with pre-cooked sous vide meat, where you can get the consumer to sear the meat, then they add the sauce, and it actually, that term deglazes the pan. It pulls up whatever sticky bits from the meat. It kind of sounds a funny way to say it, but they call it fond in the restaurant business. From the meat sticks to the pan and incorporates it in the sauce and gives you a remarkable flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sauces were really important. So while all this development was happening on the protein side, simultaneously, we're working on all our sauces, and we had a little bit of a head start because we had these conventional recipes for these delicious 5-star quality sauces that were very popular and very mainstream. But then we had to work out all the ingredients and make the nutrition profiles work.
Exactly, because you started with traditional. So something like, how do you, because with Kevin's, it's all paleo, so no soy, no dairy, no wheat, no grains, legumes, and especially no processed sugar. And one of the things that impresses me about all of them, and it's why I featured them in the TV segment and on the Shape article, was these are like so moderate in sodium compared to most pre-prepared meals. And they're also a lot lower in sugar, even things that like, I was like, kind of had that, the dietitian suspicious eye. I was like, the Korean chicken's going to be high sugar, and then I looked and I was like, wow, no, it's not. So how did you come up with things like that and like the teriyaki sauce without having the processed sugar in there?
First became the desire to match the flavor profile you would expect from like a Korean barbecue sauce. So as opposed to a lot of other paleo products that were emerging at the time, or even recipes online where you would cook the Korean barbecue sauce and then it would be paleo, someone in my situation was likely to eat it and enjoy it better than not eating anything. But it didn't capture the flavor good enough where someone who was just looking to improve their life and didn't necessarily have to have as much motivation to give up sweetness altogether, in their sauces, wouldn't go for it. So we said, we can't just be like an unsweetened Korean barbecue and pretend that it's like a Korean barbecue chicken. We want this to taste like Korean barbecue chicken. And so when we developed the sauce, and that's, again, coming from Dan, I'm not going to put an unsweetened, that's a sweetened sauce. I've been in the restaurant for 30 years. You can't tell me that's Korean barbecue. So we go in and we start to develop. And the first thing we had to deal with was the base of every sauce. If it's Thai coconut sauce, we dealt with the coconut milk and the bases we used, and those were a little bit easier. But when you got into sauces like, because coconut milk is already paleo, so that was an easier recipe to flip. Right. Yeah. But on like something like teriyaki, which is a mainstay, so I love using it as an example, it was soy sauce based. So we end up subbing it with coconut aminos, which seems like an easy transition on the front end, but it's totally not from a culinary standpoint, because although coconut aminos is great and we're so happy that it exists, it doesn't have quite as much umami. So you have to deal with how you bring the umami back up to make it taste like what you'd expect, but you can't use something like a MSG or synthetic, So we would use things like shiitake mushroom and find and we'd have to have more aminos than you typically would soy sauce to make it punchier, So there's just a development.
For a second about the coconut aminos. So people who aren't familiar, soy sauce, just traditional soy sauce, unless it specifies that it's gluten-free, also contains gluten. So you guys are looking to make sure this product's gluten-free. You're looking to not have soy. So not only, so soy sauce has soy in it and it also has gluten in it. Coconut aminos are something that you'll see not often in traditional grocery stores. It'll be more in like a natural foods store. And coconut aminos, you can use them like you would soy sauce. But to Kevin's point, they don't have quite this earthy richness. And if you're not familiar with the term umami, it's sort of this like, there's like sweet, salty, sour, bitter. Umami is considered like another level of it. That is like, you almost
savory, a savory note.
And it's hard to detect it, but like you don't even know it when you're experiencing it, but you know it if it's not there, type of a thing. And what you said about the mushrooms is great. Mushrooms, if you even like puree mushrooms and add them into a sauce, you don't even realize it, but it can add thickness and body to a sauce, but it also adds that umami flavor that Kevin was talking about. So the coconut aminos are kind of the main thing in that sauce that's, like you said, the base of of what would be a soy sauce replacer, but it's lacking. So it's not quite the richness that you would, I'm sure that Dan wanted. And so then, adding something like the mushroom puree. Sorry, wanted to make sure our listeners are with us along the way.
No, I'm so happy you broke that down. That's so great. Okay, so then you've dealt with that aspect of the sauce. After you've chosen your coconut aminos, got the right levels, figured out the umami, that's just one component. Then you have to capture the sweetness of teriyaki sauce. And that presents a challenge in multiple ways, because teriyaki sauce is typically comprised of a lot of brown sugar, which contributes in a couple of ways. It contributes to the sweetness, but it also provides, a thickness and a mouthfeel, like a syrupy mouthfeel that you're used to with teriyaki. So you got to deal with both of those things. So we turned to every natural sweetener under the book, and started experimenting with them. And they were like things like monk fruit. Have you guys talked about monk fruit before on the podcast?
On this podcast. Yeah. And I can, we've talked about, it's a intensely sweet, plant-based sweetener. So something like, monk fruit isn't a 1-to-1. It's like 100 or 150 to 1 of the sweetness of sugar. But yeah, I can link to that for our listeners who are interested in more about plant-based sweeteners, but monk fruit is incredible.
We ended up kind of falling in love with it. And it's like playing with fire. You got to figure out how to use it because it's so sweet.
Yes.
And if you were to buy this, a lot of times it's cut down with other additives like dextrose or other corn derivatives that we can't add to try to make it a 1-to-1 ratio with sugar, because it's so sweet. They try to blend it with something else. So we would get the forms you were talking about, the highly concentrated forms. It's just the pure monk fruit that doesn't raise your blood sugar, that has no calories, no sugar, but has an intense sweetness. And started playing with that at different levels. And there's different methods. We had to incorporate it into the kettle, and I don't want to get into all that technical, but just learning how to use monk fruit right to capture the right level of sweetness was big. And we would have to, maybe there was something we balanced it out with in some formulas. Maybe there's like a coconut sugar in this case, or something we could use at a really low level to try to get, because coconut sugar is unrefined and slower digesting. So it's better than a refined sugar. It doesn't hit your bloodstream as fast. But we could also use it at moderate levels. It doesn't have, to balance it, it doesn't have that intense sweetness of monk fruit. So
without the monk fruit, you would have had to use too much coconut sugar, because it would still be added sugar. And like, as a frame of reference for our listeners, a quarter cup of the Korean barbecue sauce has like 2 grams added sugar. So it's really, really low. Yeah. Let's pause for a moment to talk about Team 8, one of our sponsors for this week's episode. So personal training is one of the top ways for people to get in shape and hit our fitness goals. For many, though, there can be barriers to having your own personal trainer, especially when you're working around a busy schedule. So Team 8 Fitness is here to solve those problems. They provide you with your very own personal trainer through a virtual service that allows you to work out anywhere, wherever, and whenever it's most convenient for you. And as a good trainer does, your Team 8 trainer listens to your goals and creates a custom workout to get the results you want. Manage your workouts, talk with the trainer, and track all of your progress directly through your phone or computer. Take control of your fitness goals today with your virtual personal trainer. Get 50% off your first month when you use the code FUELED at checkout. Go to team8fitness.com to sign up. That's team, the number 8, and fitness.com. Use promo code FUELED at checkout to get 50% off your first month. Team 8 Fitness, online training made personal.
So that was the balance, and there was just more and more experimenting that went on with that. And then then we had to deal with, thickening the sauce and capturing the right thickness. So it because mouthfeel is a big part of it. It's got to coat the chicken when you saute it, or the vegetables when you use it in a stir fry. And so we ended up turning to something called tapioca starch instead of cornstarch, and our thickener became tapioca starch. And harder to source, but worked almost the same way. And once you learned what the right ratios were, it worked out really well. And it's a ground root, so it's paleo friendly. And then we kind of rounded it out. The other ingredients worked. The spices were fine. You just had to make sure you were sourcing them from the right company, so they were treated well along the way. And garlic and ginger, and every sauce had its own story like that, where you just had to deal with these various aspects of capturing all of the things that you look for in a well-rounded sauce to make it so Brad couldn't tell. You'd serve that to him and not tell him. He wouldn't know if that was a healthy alternative. That was the goal.
Exactly. And so I think, kind of as you say, it isn't that there's this miracle formula. It's focusing. It's an unwavering commitment to quality. I love how you say, like, if you try to say too much, you say nothing. If you try to do too much, you do nothing. So y'all are focusing on, how do we do these few things the best? We're going to perfect it, and then we're going to move on. But it is really It's time, it's patience, it's focus, it's getting it just right, and it's not compromising on any of the things, the parameters that are the true values to y'all. And I think as consumers or as people who are, innovators themselves, everyone, we always want to hear like, what is like maybe that extra something that was like sort of the secret to it or the trick there. This has just been like focus and time and perfection to bring it together.
That's it. I mean, there was a lot of things that were working from a timing standpoint. The team really gelled and everything, but when it comes down to it, you're exactly right. I think what separates us is, and a lot of this I picked up along the way, is from Dan and his philosophy with business, but just doing it. It's very much like Nike, like just do it. So you want to make a teriyaki sauce that tastes good. It may take you 50 iterations. Don't compromise. Just do 50 iterations, and then on your 51st, show it to the consumers. And if they don't like it, go do another 50.
Right.
And just work, just unwavering work ethic. I mean, we don't stop until it's perfect.
So y'all are continuing to expand distribution into stores, and what's mostly in stores now, when we're talking about the products, is kind of the entrees where it's the protein and then the sauce together. But also y'all do have just the sauces on its own or just seasoning on its own. And so I'll link to the website, which is Kevin's Natural Foods. I'll put that on our episode notes. So take a look on there. Like if you have seen Kevin's in stores, a lot of the stores, at least that I see, there might be 2 options. There might be 3 or 4 options, but there's a lot more on their website that you can order from. So distribution, y'all are continuing. You'll have more than 8,000 stores now. I'm sure that's continuing to grow. And then visibility. What are the things that y'all are doing? I mean, obviously things like this podcast, and reaching out for social media, traditional marketing. What are some of the other things that are kind of y'all's key priorities to increase visibility of the brand?
What we're trying to do is we need to have a dialogue with passionate, health conscious consumers that are actively out there looking for solutions. And then we also need to be in touch with and in front of folks that are not as gung-ho, but have that motivation, so the folks that are less likely to go to a diet blog or something, but are still nonetheless, they're just busy, they're looking for ways to improve their life as well. So we have almost like 2 parallel paths where social media is great for, advertising to a core group of audience that is going to respond well to your ads. We do a lot of ads on Instagram and try to put content out that is valuable and useful, much like your approach. And we're always looking at what are the other hurdles that we can't solve with just the food products. So like, for example, we heard in focus groups that we had people bring their pans once, and they brought these expensive like Williams Sonoma frying pans, and they weren't any good, or, they were, in most cases, they were too fancy and they weren't the right pan for the person. And so we ended up manufacturing a pan. We have a industrial strength skillet that's 4 millimeters thick, made with no chemicals, chemical free, none of the offensive chemicals, no Teflon or any of that stuff. It's all ceramic coated. It's the best pan you could get. So anyways, the point being is we're going to be selling that on the site, and then 100 recipe cookbook to go along with that. And we'll give it away for prizes. And we're not trying to make money on the pan. What we're trying to do is reward our followers for staying in touch with us. And here you could buy this really, really fancy pan that, a chef would be happy to have and is clean for an affordable price. And it's, $50 less than what you get at retail. And here's a cookbook to go with it. And you have 100 meals at your fingertips. So good content. We're trying to put good content out there. Then on the mainstream advertising side, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. A lot of the advertising happens B2B. So through the grocery stores, we're participating in their ads and working with them to get placement B2B opportunities. So the B2B, it means business to business advertising. So we give a marketing program to a grocery store, and they use those funds and use that for their own B2C, which is business to consumer advertising. So we have trade funding, and it's required in the business. That's one thing that if you're starting a company that's going to be focused on selling through retail, you have to have money set aside or built into your margins to cover the trade funding. And the grocery stores will help you get the word out and give you placement opportunities. Like you can go in this bunker for a 2-week promo and we're going to put you on sale. And then you're getting in front of more eyeballs there. And then
so wait, let me
long-term,
back up. Is that, the funds for, as you call it, like the trade funds, that's required. Like that part has to happen for most grocery stores, or is it optional? Or you're just saying like you should have this to be able to put these things together for stores?
It is required for sure. There's a lot of brands start in the natural food space because they have made, natural food stores, Whole Foods and other stores, Sprouts and other co-ops across the country, natural grocers, places like that. They've kind of built their brand on finding these obscure products that are really cool and helpful and giving them a shot, and they'll give you some more flexibility. The traditional grocery stores, it's part of their model. They have so many, they tend to be bigger, a lot of SKUs, a lot of space, a lot of overhead. I came from the grocery business, so I'm very sympathetic to trying to manage and run that business with all of the overhead involved and labor and thousands of employees. They need to keep these products moving. So if something new hits the shelf, they have, they may have 30,000 more SKUs than some of the smaller natural food stores. They got to keep these products moving. So if you want to roll something new out, you got to get in their ad and have funds for that, because that's how the program, how it's all set up. So the path for a lot of brands is to start with, the natural guys and then expand. And as you start to get more revenue, you're able to set aside 3, 5, 8, 10%, depending as you grow, try to, it's a lot. I mean, we're not there at those big numbers yet, but you got to set some aside, and depending on, the account and what they're willing to offer you. And you just work it, you got to try to work it into your model, into your business model. It's just part of your operating expense.
Yeah, I think that's a part where getting into grocery stores that a lot of people aren't aware of. And something that you'll hear people it's like one of those like secrets of, the supermarket world is that, there's certain shelf space that's quote paid for. And I think, that's one of the things that we won't get into all that. That would be like, it's a whole nother thing. I'd love to bring someone in from a grocery store that's like talking about what those things are. But to some degree, there is a little bit of like, there needs to be a payment involved because, or funds available, because like you said, the advertisement that's going with the store and helping the store to promote it. So it's at least not that it's just money that you're paying to the store to carry the product. It is a way that it's another form of marketing. It's another form of advertising. It's just maybe not what most people think of as traditional, if we are thinking of advertising.
In one thing I'll say that's encouraging to the listeners that are looking to go this path is that there has been a lot of conventional supermarkets that have waived what you were talking about is called slotting fees. They have waived slotting for the brand because we're aligned with their core objectives. It's very rare.
That warms my heart. That's really cool. They let you get in there and like take bizarre photos in their space, and
I love the supermarkets.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I love them. They're trying to help. I mean, everybody, they're just trying to make it in a hyper competitive environment.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
Every supermarket has, if you look at their core initiatives, it's health and convenience are up there. And there's nobody's coming to them for that section for health and convenience. So the category managers in a lot of cases, not all of them, but in a lot of cases are like, look, I could work with you guys.
That's great.
You can negotiate down. So it's been positive.
That's great. Okay. And so then what's next for you guys? Because obviously you're not stopping with what you have right now. So you have just to kind of run through, you've got the proteins that are like the meats, the entrees that are like the meats with the sauces already in there. You have the sides that you talked about, like the cauliflower, like the potato, like mashed cauliflower, or the cauliflower mac and cheese, rice cauliflowers. You have the sauces, the seasonings. And again, we'll link to these. What else are y'all looking at? If you can share anything that is currently in the R&D stages, or like what other avenues y'all are looking at in store space or anything else?
Yeah. So all of those categories you mentioned were launched, essentially in 2020, except for the chicken entrees. So right now there's so much opportunity within our existing lines, and we need to expand the menu. So we're hearing from customers and supermarkets alike that, for example, let's just take entrees. It's mostly been chicken entrees up until a couple of months ago. And we launched our first grass-fed steak tips entree, beef entree. And with same cooking method, sous vide, cooked to a perfect medium temp. And we just paired it with one of our top sauces, the Korean sauce, to get a read on if people like steak. And it turns out they do. They want beef. They want more of those entrees. So we're in the process of expanding our grass-fed beef offering in the same kind of format. And same with pork. We found a great supply of antibiotic-free pork that's raised humanely, crate-free. And we're launching our first product on the 15th in the Northwest region of Costco. It'll be our first pork item. It's a pork tenderloin and a pomegranate ginger sauce. And they're so excited about it. The tenderloin works great in the sous vide process. So we'll continue to expand.
Pomegranate ginger, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds awesome. When is that going to be?
That'll be the week of April 15th, right around there.
Oh,
Costco
that's very
Northwest.
cool. Okay. So
Yeah,
eventually it'll
exciting.
make its way our way. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So
Yeah,
different
so
sauces,
expanding the
different
proteins. Exactly, expanding that. There's so much room in the refrigerated set. More sides, different types of heat and eat sides. Like the latest one we just rolled out a couple weeks ago is a mashed sweet potato made with 100% white sweet potatoes and ghee and a touch of coconut milk and roasted garlic. Very clean, heat and eat, easy. So we'll keep innovating there. And then same thing on the sauces. There's slow cooker sauces on the horizon. You could just take like a roast and then pop one of our slow cooker sauces eventually into the Instapot or whatever you're cooking with, or crock pot, and cook that up. So a lot of innovation within our existing categories. And then there's tons of other categories in the store we're looking at, frozen and beyond, just whatever we're going to keep kind of creeping through and finding different opportunities, different categories that have been forgotten and ignored, and try to bring
or
to life
just done poorly. Like, or okay, we shouldn't say poorly, because there are some that are done okay. But if you can take something that's in the freezer section and it doesn't taste like it's in the freezer section, that's really cool too. Because there's just not much that's there. There's some. It's improving, but there's definitely there's a huge space for that, I think, in the freezer section as well. And that kind of goes to even that like hyper convenient space that people are looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's a nut we'll have to crack at some point and just get to work on it and figure out if we can do it.
Yes.
I think we can with the right team.
Love it. I love that all that you guys are doing, and I can't wait to see more and taste more as it goes. Anything that we haven't covered that you want to share with our listeners?
No, this has been great. I just appreciate you having me on. And I just am so happy that you are doing this and that you're reaching people and educating and it seems like we're kind of aiming at the same thing, but through taking a different path to get there. So I'm glad we synced up.
Yeah. And I appreciate what you guys are doing. And I think kind of going back to that focus group time that you had, it's like a lot of people could hear that, the feedback from people, and they would keep saying, well, just let's get back to what's at hand. Let's have you focus on, we're here to taste these sauces or do these meal kits and test these out. But instead, you're like, wait a second, there's a need here. And you were like in a place where you were ready to hear the nutritional concerns and the nutritional needs. And then so to create a product that fits into that, it makes it easy for people to do the things that people are striving to do, but maybe don't have the skill or the time or the resources to do, is much appreciated on my side. So thank you very much.
Of course. I guess that the one last thing, since we were talking about the focus group, is we are still doing them. We just did our first virtual focus group a couple of days ago, and we posted about it. We actually went to our email list and just said, do you want to sign up for the group? So to one of the points we covered earlier, what was so nice about the virtual focus group is we got to talk to people all over the country at the same time. And it took out that geographic element.
Yeah.
We sent them the food in advance. They prepared it with their families and got on with us. So if anybody out there wants to be in the next virtual focus group, just sign up for our email list, and we'll be blasting it out and doing another one in the future.
I will link to that as well. Well, sweet. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks.
So a huge thank you to Kevin for joining us today. I think some of these takeaways that we talked about are also things that are takeaways we can start doing in our own kitchen and playing around with some of these recipes and kind of gradually making these tweaks, gradually kind of editing these dishes so that we can help to dial back less of the stuff we don't want and plug in more of the stuff we do want. And regardless, I think it's really cool when these brands that align with our wellness goals are starting to come into stores. And I love hearing that stores are supporting more of these brands coming in. So I always love a good behind the brand story. So I hope that you guys enjoy this with Kevin with me as well. And I'll include the links that he and I talked about in the show notes of this episode. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.